Good morning. We're going to get to read The Curious Garden today. It's written and illustrated by a man named Peter Brown. And so this story is about a little boy named Liam who is curious. And every time I hear the word curious, I think of Curious George. Curious is thinking about and wondering about things that you want to discover. You have questions in your mind. You're curious. Good learners are always curious about things. Makes me think of you guys too. So there's a few questions before we read that we have in the flap of our book. And good readers ask questions before they read, during their reading, and after. So just be thinking about these questions as we read it. What makes the city dreary? What does curious mean? Like we just talked about. What do you think Liam will do? How does Liam become a real gardener? How are Liam and the garden alike? So let's read to find out. The Curious Garden. So the setting for the story is the city. And we don't really think of gardens in a city, do we? So Liam's really going to help this city. There once was a city without gardens, or trees, or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. I can't imagine spending all my time indoors. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems. But the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. So pruning is when you cut the dead things away so that new things can grow, like new leaves and new branches. It's always good to prune your plants. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Look how they're changing. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. There's just pictures, no words on these pages, just showing you. Wow. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Look at all that snow. There he is. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. Look how he's preparing for spring. And now we're going to infer. I wonder what he's reading about. I'm thinking that he's reading how to make an even better garden. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to